Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hearty welcome to the second day of the international webinar on environmental theatre and language teaching, organized by the Department of English of Madras Christian College, India. As teachers, we have a great responsibility in this world. This is clearly reflected in the poetic supplication of a 13th century friar by name Francis of Assisi. I quote, "Lord, make me an instrument of peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy." As teachers, we have this great calling in our lives. I hope this sets the tone to commence the day. To start today's webinar, I take this opportunity to request Dr. Anne Thomas, Madam, a senior professor of the Department of English, to offer the opening prayer. Over to Dr. Anne Thomas.
Thank you, Arun. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Shall we close our eyes and look to the Lord in prayer? Lord, our gracious and most loving Heavenly Father, and the fountain of all wisdom, you and praise you for the gift of another day, dotted with myriad blessings. As we bow our heads and humble ourselves before you, we seek your blessings on our Department of English, and particularly on this international webinar, which is entering its second day today. We glorify you for your grace and blessings yesterday, the first day of the webinar. It's indeed a blessed assurance to anchor our hope and faith on God Almighty, the Alpha and Omega of all our endeavors. As the Bible verse says in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 10, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe." O Rock of Ages, we know that we are safe in your hands, as it is said that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We pray that your enlightened wisdom will be there upon us as we listen to our resource person for today, Dr. Dwight Atkinson, a friend, philosopher, and guide of our department. We thank you for the fellowship which Dr. Dwight has enjoyed over the years with the Department of English. Lord, we also uphold in our prayers our principal, our bursar, the head of the department, the former and current faculty members of Madras Christian College, our alumni, and all the participants from the length and breadth of the world, and our beloved students. To you, O mighty and eternal Lord, we give all glory and honor as we once again humbly seek your sustained blessings on our webinar. I pray this in the matchless name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Madam. With gratitude, I thank Dr. Dwight for being with us today. I consider Dr. Dwight as one of my inspiring teachers. I remember his great dynamic classes while I was a student at MCC. Now I request Dr. Meerkat Rajan, the chair of our department, to kindly welcome the participants.
Good morning to all. The Department of English, Madras Christian College is delighted to welcome you to the second day of the webinar on environmental theatre and language teaching. By the grace of God, day one witnessed how Dr. May Joseph recreated the environment and transformed the past, capturing the lost situations and bringing them to life through her unique performances. I thank our principal, Dr. Paul Wilson, and our bursar, Mr. Cyrus, for giving us this incredible opportunity of witnessing the newness and nuances in performative arts. I welcome both of you to today's session on language teaching by Dr. Dwight Atkinson. Dr. Dwight is a wonderful human being with rich experience in language teaching. He's part of the English department family. He visits the department whenever he gets an opportunity and has the power to make even the most serious person happy and chirpy. As a department, we've had lovely moments with him, which we still cherish. We are delighted to welcome you, dear sir. My professors who made us what we are today, my classmates, heads, professors, former and present, departments, alumni, student, friends from MCC and the other countries are here with us. I extend a hearty welcome to all of you. The togetherness and support of all my staff from the Department of English adds flavor and stamina to all academic ventures. A very sincere welcome to all of you. Professor Arun Kumar sowed the seeds for this webinar, and Professor Sam Golden, our department rep, Mr. Allen, the technically skilled Mr. Jerome, Mr. Theophilus Samuel, and Mr. Jackson nourished it with so much of care and devotion that the webinar branched out beautifully, reaching out to so many. I welcome this very efficient team and wish them all success. I invite all of you once again to enjoy the session on language teaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam, for your warm welcome. We are truly honored to have an eminent resource person amidst us today. I request Dr. S. Samuel Rufus, a senior professor of our department, to kindly introduce Dr. Dwight Atkinson.
Thank you, Arun. It's a pleasure and a privilege to introduce and invite Dr. Dwight Atkinson to our midst. He has been with the MCC for quite a long time, for over 2 decades now. He prefers to call himself a honorary MCCN and inducted Thomasian. In the year 2000, he was inducted to the Thomas Hall, and he started off in Japan, working on second language acquisition, and then he moved on to India, especially in universities and colleges in India, particularly in MCC. He has spent over 2 years staying in campus, and he has deliberated or interacted with the Part 2 English students in particular. I have seen, he used to come and sit passively at the back, without disturbing the class, and he used to observe whatever is going on, how we impart language skills, because he was very much interested in the second language acquisition part. And then he was with the University of Purdue for quite some time, and then he is now with the University of Arizona. And Dwight, sir, as we call him, is a remarkable human being, as Dr. Meglas rightly told us. And a few years back, I happened to read a wonderful book. It's a handbook on language and culture, because till then I haven't seen a wonderful handbook on language and culture. We have handbooks on social linguistics, on applied linguistics, on pragmatics, but a handbook on language and culture, especially in the theory era, was lacking. And I found this book, 2015 edition by Routledge, a handbook of language and culture, very interesting and very invigorating for my lectures on language with reference to the post-colonial situation. And there I was surprised to find a wonderful article by Professor Dwight Atkinson. I think it is the 28th article there. It is titled Writing Across Cultures, a wonderful article where he has given a beautiful definition of the term culture. And so this article, I think, is a must read, especially for those of us. It's a primer, I would say, for those of us engaging in these, problematic terms, language and culture. So we are so honored and so privileged to welcome you to our midst, Professor Dwight. It's an honor for all of us. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rufus, sir, for that beautiful introduction. Dear Professor Dwight, we are so happy that you're with us today. Participants from across the globe are with us right now to listen to you. I joyfully hand over the session to you. Over to Dr. Dwight.
Thank you. Let me very quickly share the screen. Then I will, do I have the, yes, okay. Be sure everything's working properly before I continue. Uh, are you able to see the screen, and are you able to hear me well
Yes.
enough?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Great. Okay. So I want to say that I'm sorry, I'm going to do like Dr. Joseph did yesterday. I'm going to set a timer so I don't talk for the rest of human history. I am so thrilled to be here today. Any opportunity I have to be back together with my friends at MCC and to be associated in any way with the wonderful MCC English department is just a pure pleasure for me. So when I got the invitation, I was excited, and I haven't stopped being excited since then. I hope I can convey to you some of my own excitement about some of the things that I'm interested in and that are not exactly English literature favorites, but still I hope that somehow connect to these very important topics that we're teaching about, including ecology and the relationship of human beings to their natural world, including teaching, as the principal talked about yesterday, and including learning, which everyone has to sort of be engaged and involved in this new world that is facing us every day now, and probably is not going to become any less of a learning experience as we go forward in these middle decades of the 21st century. So I will try to make some other connections as I go along. But first, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Dr. Mikula. Thank you, Professor Arun. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Dr. Rufus. And thank you all for inviting me. I'm so happy to be back. So let me begin. And let me begin by having to say, unfortunately, that all of you, you're all a bunch of animals. I'm sorry to say I'm one too. We all are animals. And the connection I'd like to make between human beings and other animals today is that are all, maybe not all animals, but that many of us as members of the living world are not only natural creatures, but we're also natural teachers, okay? That's the argument that I'd like to try to present to you in a persuasive, and I hope also somewhat entertaining way today. So about 5 or 10 years ago, well, as Professor Rufus said, I've been teaching English language for a long time, and about 40 years. And I've been educating teachers to teach English as a second language, English language teaching, for about 20 years. But until about 5 or so years ago, I had never thought about the meaning of what I was doing. In other words, I'd never really thought about what it means to teach. What is teaching? I had spent a lot of time teaching teachers how to teach. I had spent an enormous amount of time teaching and watching others teach. But I realized with a bit of a shock that I had never actually sort of conceptualized what it meant to be a teacher, or to put it differently, what teaching is. And that became a kind of obsession with me. Why don't I, a professional teacher and teacher trainer, teacher educator, know more about what it is, have more sort of conscious, systematic knowledge about what it is that I'm doing. So that's the genesis of this exploration, this trip, my own trip of intellectual travel that I'd like to introduce you to. So in order to answer this question, I first went to my friends, many of whom are wonderful teachers of English as a second language, English as an additional language, and I asked them. And they gave me a variety of answers. A few of them were very honest, and said the same thing that I had said to myself. I don't know what teaching is. I just teach. I don't know how to define it. That's what they said. Others, thoughtful, perhaps more thoughtful than I was, had defined teaching to me as something like, helping students to learn. And that made some sense to me, but it wasn't exactly new information, so I wanted to look farther. So I did what any academic nerd would do. I did a little review of the academic literature in my field. To be more specific, I went to the library and I got the first 50 books published since the year 2000, and there are many books on this topic that had in their titles the following terms: language teaching, second language teaching, English language teaching, teaching English to speakers of other languages, which is how we refer to it often in the US. Now, what do you think I found? Well, here's a few numbers. So more than 4/5 of the books that had these words in their titles didn't provide a definition of teaching. Somehow this wasn't totally surprising to me. And the other 18 or so % that did define teaching typically did it quite briefly, as if they were sort of moving from one topic to another, and they were saying, oh yes, and teaching, and gave a brief definition, often of the sort of, helping other people learn type of answer. There were a few more sophisticated ones, but generally speaking, this is what I got. If you're interested in reading more about this kind of study, I did publish something you can find, I think, on the internet. Well, I didn't yet feel satisfied with what I was finding. So I took another step. I started to look at the academic literature beyond my field. I started to get interdisciplinary, as we have been talking about at this seminar, and I looked into a number of other fields, such as psychology, anthropology, education, not for second language teaching, but general education. Did I mention archaeology, primate studies, and other animal studies, ethology, the study of behavior, animal and human behavior. And I found there, I think, a first approximation to an answer to my question. And it came in the form of a concept called natural pedagogy. And my talk today is basically an attempt to sort of walk you through some of the meanings of this term that I have discovered and find quite stimulating, and something I want to share with others, the idea. And yes, that's sort of what I want to do, and to argue in particular that this is something that humans are born with, that humans are not just educated to be teachers, like taking a B.Ed program or something like that, but in fact are born as part of their human existence with skills for teaching, okay? And of course, the best place to start talking about human beings is in the realm of our animal brothers and sisters. So let me introduce to you now just a selection of natural teachers, animals which have been found through scientific research to teach their young. So the domestic hen, over here we have the otter, which I'll introduce you a little bit more to in a moment. The domestic house cat. This is the fairy wren, notable nest builder and teacher of nest building. Down here we have the golden lion tamarin monkey. And finally, I would like to add part of my argument. Oh, sorry, I missed one. This is the champion of animal teachers, the superstar. This is the South African meerkat, which is a kind of mongoose. I'll introduce you more to meerkats in a moment. And I want to add to this list, and this will be the basis of my argument, what I would like to at least get you to think about a little bit, the addition to this club of the human being in its natural ecological manifestation. Let's see. I would just like to stop here quickly and be sure that you can hear me and that the signal is clear. Could I get a confirmation from perhaps Professor Rufus? Or?
Yes, sir, you are clear.
All right, good. Let me go ahead. It's a little different when you can mostly see your own face and not hear other voices.
Perfect,
Good.
perfect.
All right, thank you so much. So let's begin by looking at the superstar of animal teaching, the meerkat. Okay, I'm going to show you a short video of meerkat teaching. Let me just say that you're going to see two meerkats. The first, and meerkats are quite small. So the first one is actually the adult teacher. And the second one, which comes into the screen later, is the baby learner, infant learner. And what you see here is the meerkat teacher serving a wonderful meerkat delicacy, one of the delicacies of meerkat cuisine to the younger meerkat. And this delicacy is a scorpion. Meerkats eat many different kinds of insects, small lizards and things like that, but scorpions are one of their favorites. And I just wanted to say by the by that my own experience with scorpions is a product of MCC. The first time I ever met scorpions was somewhere on the road between Bishop Heber Hall and the International Guest House. And with those experiences, those and other scorpion experiences on the campus, I was well armed to come to live where I live now in southern Arizona, basically a desert environment where we have a lot of scorpions. So as in many other aspects of life, I was well trained at MCC. So let me then introduce you to scorpion kindergarten. This is a scorpion getting basic instruction in how to catch and kill, a baby meerkat getting basic instruction in how to catch and kill scorpions.
Meerkats aren't known for their brains, but they happen to be very good teachers. It's usually assumed that teaching requires high levels of intelligence, but
I just remembered that I have to ask you a question before we watch the whole video. So I would like you to think as you watch this and the next video, why in the world might these animals, have to evolve these particular teaching behaviors, okay? We don't believe that teaching is very, very widely spread out throughout the animal kingdom. It's a sort of specialized and somewhat costly in terms of bioenergy of each animal keeping itself alive. But why would the meerkat in this case and the river otter in the next case seem to have evolved these special behaviors for teaching? Okay, that's the question I'd like to ask you briefly at the end of this little display. So let me begin again.
Meerkats aren't known for their brains, but they happen to be very good teachers. It's usually assumed that teaching requires high levels of intelligence, but researchers are starting to think otherwise. A young meerkat will be presented with a dead scorpion for dinner, but when it gets a bit older, an adult will present it with a live scorpion that's had its sting removed. The pup can then learn how to kill the scorpion without the risk of getting stung. Although it may seem like the adult is recognizing the pup's growing experience, researchers are actually finding that they're a lot less clever. Meerkats are simply responding to changes in the pup's begging calls. When a young meerkat becomes self-sufficient, adults can all spend longer foraging, so it benefits the whole group. In this case, teaching is based on instinct rather than complex thought.
So according to the research that's been done on meerkat teaching, there are 3 steps in the process of teaching baby meerkats to catch and eat scorpions. In the first step, the adult basically kills the scorpion, throws it in front of the baby, sort of pushes it around with her nose to make it look alive, and then the baby is supposed to smell the scorpion and jump on it and eat it, kill it. It's dead, but eat it. In the second step, which is what I think we're seeing here, a second level of learning, teaching-based learning, the adult meerkat, that's the nice way of saying this, she edits the scorpion. She cuts off a couple of its legs so it can't run, and she cuts off its poisonous tail so it can't sting. And then the baby comes in and catches it and kills it. In the third and final stage, the adult presents a fully functional scorpion, which the baby or child catches and kills. If the scorpion escapes, the teacher brings it back and presents it to the baby again. Now, with having said that, I might just ask you if you have any ideas, if anyone wants to demute their mic for a moment. Why do you think an animal might want to go to all this trouble? Not an animal, but this particular animal. Why would teaching be, let's say, more efficient in this case than just allowing the baby meerkat to learn how to do it on its own? If anyone has any thoughts, just briefly, I'd love to hear them. Why might meerkats teach? Any thought? All right, I'm going to ask you this question again after the next video, and I would like to hear someone's thought on this, just a guess, okay? So the next animal teacher I'd like to introduce you to is the river otter. This is a kind of aquatic mammal that lives in rivers on the west coast of the United States and Canada. It's something like a seal. It's a sort of a member of the same animal group as a seal.
We're very excited. Malala is actually our new river otter pup. He was born 9 weeks ago. He is currently about 2,000 grams, which is a lot bigger than he was when he was born. He was about a handful of jelly beans when he was born. So he's growing very fast, and we're super excited to have him on exhibit. He has been developing quite the personality as he gets older. When they're first born, their eyes are closed, they're fully furred, but they're actually not very mobile. So mom basically has to do everything for them. As he's gotten older, he's starting to walk around, he's gonna start swim lessons. People might actually be really surprised, but baby otters don't know how to swim when they're first born. They actually have to go through swim lessons, which sounds kind of silly, being that they are water-loving mammals. So mom will actually drag them out onto the exhibit and throw them in the water. This might look a little brutal to us. It's kind of scary for us to watch, but it's natural for them. So mom gets them in the water. They actually float. They're quite buoyant, and he'll start doggy paddling around. What kind of looks scary for all of us watching is mom has to actually teach him how to dive. So you'll see her pushing him underneath the water and holding him down there just to kind of get him used to being underwater. So as he continues to develop his swimming skills, he'll get a little bit faster. He'll start diving in on his own. But initially it looks a little brutal because she pretty much has to drag him around the whole exhibit. About 9:30 is when mom is given access to the exhibit, and
Good. Okay, so here's the second case of animal teaching. Again, I would like to pose the question to you, if anybody would like to take a little stab at it. What special conditions or what special reasons, that's the right word, pressures under what pressures, environmental pressures might these animals have developed these special skills of teaching? Any thoughts? Maybe not, huh?
Professor, there are a lot of comments on YouTube.
Okay, could you read one or two?
I'll just read a couple of them.
Thank you.
One says, learning always go along with memory, and teaching life skills is part of animal behavior. And every animal has its own innate thing to teach the young ones, teaching to live independently, experiential learning. These are the comments that I could read from here.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, there's a lot of discussion of the why of evolution. Evolution doesn't exactly work by posing a question and then solving it, but it works by there being some need or exigence for some kind of special action. Here we see river otters, in fact, don't know how to swim. They have floating abilities from the beginning, but to actually dive under the water which they need to do to be able to eat, because they eat things off the bottom of the river. They actually need to be trained and given some kind of opportunity, provided some kind of opportunity, actively structured, actively scaffolded, actively supported to do so. In the case of the meerkat, eating scorpions is probably not the safest or easiest thing to do, to learn. So to make the process more efficient, to make the process safer and in fact easier to do, and thereby save some time and effort for having to support animals that need to become independent eaters, foragers. This is apparently why these unusual abilities have emerged. Great. So, and just to make the point a little bit differently, we can examine the environment of the meerkat, which is a fairly simple stimulus environment, with a few exceptions like the scorpions. And I'd like then to compare that with a regular sort of everyday human environment, so we could perhaps see what's different, how teaching might serve even more necessary needs in the human environment. So let's just take a quick look at the little somewhat constrained world that the meerkat lives in.
The explosions in Beirut are a shocking reminder of the fragility of human life. Our first thought is for the dead and the families of the injured,
Can't move
including
it
our colleagues,
because skip
500
ads,
of whom
okay.
family of 33.
So these are meerkats going in search of breakfast in their territory.
With the housework done, it's time for breakfast. And Flower leads the group off into the bush. Their territory covers 3 square miles, and they need every inch of it to supply enough food for this family of 33. Forget bacon sandwiches and shredded wheat. It's millipedes and beetles on the menu. The group is foraging at the outer edge.
So this is the comparatively simple ecology of the meerkat. It's a 3 square mile space for each group. And we can see that the food sources are, they have to dig. It's not simple, but that their sort of main task in this case is to find little animals in their environment. So a fairly simple stimulus environment for the meerkat. Let's now look at the human environment, okay? How does it differ? What kind of more active teaching and learning might have to go on in it? So this is one of my favorite places in the world that I thought I would introduce you to. Built very few what we would call natural characteristics. The amount of knowledge it takes, not only to build and construct and to maintain such an environment, but even just to live in it, is enormously more complex than that of the meerkat, which might suggest that human beings might have more reasons than a meerkat to teach, to transmit and innovate knowledge that it takes to maintain, to design, to provide for, and to live in this environment. All right. Let me very quickly go through this. This is a different, slightly different argument based on, for natural pedagogy, based on our nearest common ancestor and nearest common relative, our cousin, the chimpanzee. As you know, about 7 million years ago, human beings, Homo sapiens and chimpanzees, were basically the same species. And we all lived together, I'm not sure happily, but we lived together in the central equatorial in or around trees, and all of them sleep the night, spend the night in trees. Uh, have developed, adapted naturally to their environment. They have strong hands. They have very highly developed upper bodies for climbing, equally able feet for climbing. And as I was saying, nesting abilities, especially in trees, especially at night, as a kind of protection against predators. So chimpanzees are perhaps not perfectly, but highly adapted in physical ways to their environment. Let us compare that to human adaptivity, right? So if we start where the chimpanzees were, and we think about what human beings have been faced with in terms of environmental problem solving, environmental adapting over the past 7 million years, you get quite a different problem, right? So chimpanzees and other great apes stayed at home, and human beings threw themselves out into the world, first into different parts of Africa, across into Asia and Northern Europe. They traveled across to China, up to Northern Europe. They came down into India and out in through Thailand and Indonesia to Australia. They spread north into what's now called Siberia and crossed over the Bering Strait, came down into North America and went right to the tip of South America. And they did this in a fairly, I won't say short amount of time, but certainly they did it on a timescale faster than evolution, genetic evolution permits. So how did they do this? Okay, how did they do this amazing thing? The cousins stayed home. The Homo ancestors went everywhere. And the human world became the whole world. How did they do this? How did this happen? So unlike chimpanzees or unlike some other animals, if human beings come into a very cold, forbidden climate, as we have in the Arctic of the Northern Hemisphere, they don't grow fur. They don't learn to live in snow. They build an environment. They rebuild the environment so that they can survive and prosper in it. I was just going to show you on the left here a sled designed by Northern Arctic people who are wearing coats, animal skin coats, but they're not just coats, skins removed from animals. They're actually quite highly technological products. So human beings have developed any number of environmental adaptations which are cultural in the sense that they don't grow on our bodies, but they're passed on from person to person quite substantially through natural pedagogical means. I don't think in the cases here that the people who learned the valuable survival skills went to college or a grade school to learn them. They learned them through interacting with and being guided by the people in their culture. So it's a kind of cultural learning, which the argument is part of our natural instinct. It's a kind of natural culture, nature-culture combination, socio-biological, if you will. Other kinds of technologies that people have developed to survive in and prosper in the world. So that brings us to the question of, well, what other evidence is there to suggest that human beings may be natural-born teachers? This is not to discount all the other kinds of teaching that human beings do and that are absolutely important in our survival, but it is to argue that those teaching behaviors are very likely to be based on something more foundational, something more basic in the human animal, the genetic evolved nature of the human animal. And to see this, let's look at our least cultured and least educated members of our species, and that is babies, okay? And I'm just gonna show you a little bit of video of this 4-month-old baby boy, whose name is Archer, interacting with his mother. And I might ask you to tell me if you see any special behavior on the mother's part and any special sensitivities and behavior on the baby's part that might suggest evolved capacities, abilities to learn from and to teach to a child naturally, okay? What is it you can see in this interaction, if anything, that might suggest that there's some pretty serious teaching-based learning going on here, okay? Both from the mother and for the baby.
Hi, Archer. Hi, can you smile? Oh, look, you're so cute. Yeah? You took a nap, huh? Was it a good nap? Huh? Yeah. That's a good boy. Who did you sleep with? I see Elmo here. Is that your nap time, buddy? You're a good boy, huh? Are you a good boy? Yes, you are.
Great, okay. I wonder if you can see anything in this short, excuse me, video clip that suggests some possible avenues or abilities or sensitivities to the baby acquiring knowledge, being what should I say, positioned as a learner, interacting with the mother as a learner, and having the mother act as a natural teacher in any sense. Might there be some thoughts on the YouTube chats that might try to answer this question, or at least pose some guesses?
Professor, I'm voicing some of the responses from the live streaming.
Thank you.
Encouraging the child to express his feelings. Child recognizes her mother voice. Boy has the understanding capability.
Great.
The baby is learning how to respond to various stimulus like voice, color, object, etc. Understanding the emotions of others around oneself. Body language. Smart.
Wonderful. Great, great. Thank you so much. Those are wonderful answers. Let me just try to give a little bit of sort of what I think I'm seeing here. One thing to note is the mother speaks in a language which is a little different than her normal language. It has a sort of a special intonation to it. She's using very simple words. They have a kind of rhythmic quality. All of these and other characteristics of this kind of language are sometimes called baby talk or infant-directed speech. It appears it may attract children and be something that they're naturally sensitive to. So that's one thing. The mother also talks to the child as if it's a conversation partner. I don't think most 4-month-old children are probably excellent conversation partners, but the child is certainly being inducted into a world of language and interaction through language. And as you can see, the child's quite an expert at reflecting smiles and smiling and getting attention. Babies are little attention-getting machines. They're just so good at getting you to interact with them, and in that way to provide to them something that perhaps, or certainly we could say they don't know yet, right? So this baby is immersed in a world of language. We also see the mother actually put an object on the baby's stomach, which the baby then interacts with, and notably, she doesn't just do that, but she gives a linguistic label to the object, which she's put on the baby's stomach. She says, what is his name? Elmo, a kind of Sesame Street character. So she provides a referent or a categorization of a thing that she provides for the baby, and thereby is, in a sense, building its world for it. This is a that. Okay, and later, at least the argument goes, the child may be able to generalize that to other that's like that, to other stuffed animals, which, of course, in adult language, they all have different names, but children often attribute the same name to different objects of the same type, and that's a part of language learning. Okay. So there are a number of things going on here that seem to suggest that children are more than just sort of lying there, taking it all in, but they're actually actively involved, and the mothers in the same way are actively involved in providing, transmitting, learning opportunities and knowledge. All right, I think that will take me to my final slide. I don't want to take much more of your time, but I wanted to take this then directly into classroom teaching. What the question being, what kind of bases or foundations of perhaps natural pedagogy, of what we all know how to do as natural born teachers, might also be at work in the formal classroom. So this is a video made by Dr. R. Meghanathan of the INSERT program, and very kindly shared with the help of R. Ravi Kumar, who is an INSERT officer and a graduate of MCC and one of my dear friends. And this is an English language classroom, probably primary 4 or 5, I'm not exactly sure, not a lot of information. And the teacher is teaching a unit on Indian holidays. So she's just put up a picture of Eid and talked a little bit about it. And now she's going to put up a picture of Holi and ask the students to talk as she has talked. As she talked about Eid, to talk about Holi, to tell her some things about Holi. And I'd just like you to look quickly at the video. We'll just run through it once and maybe speculate at the end on what kind of pedagogical acts you see here that could have a somewhat of a basis in natural pedagogy in the way human beings teach other human beings, not because they took a B.Ed course or because they watched what another professor or teacher was doing, but because they actually have built into their natural being some special skills for communicating new knowledge to others. Okay, and the children too are human beings with sensitivities to that kind of thing. So it's a two-way street. But let's begin, and then we'll finish.
Okay, very good. Yes, who is going to speak on Holi? Yes, please. The festival of Holi. Very good. What do we do on the festival of Holi?
The Holi festival of color. People play Holi with water, gulal, etc.
Very good. Very good. Clap for him, everybody. Very good. Okay. Anybody else who wants to speak on Holi? Yes.
Holi celebrated in March.
Holi is celebrated in March. So that is in addition to that. Yes, you want to say something? Yes.
Holi celebrated in March. People are play colors,
etc. Very good. Clap for them.
Great. So I know this is quick. I know we don't usually look at classrooms in this way, but I'm wondering if any of the commentators on YouTube or otherwise might want to share anything they might have seen that could be construed as a kind of natural communicative ability to communicate information, knowledge, or to encourage knowledge acquisition in this classroom. Are there any comments on YouTube that would?
Yeah, yes, sir. Creating interaction. Teacher is creating a teaching learning environment in the classroom with the help of picture-based of idea and association. She is teaching students to communicate and express themselves. Positive reinforcement of a correct answer that promotes interest in learning. Making them speak out of their thoughts.
Great, great. That's a wonderful quick collection. Let me just give a short comment. Yes, those are things that the teacher is definitely doing. Now, we might argue that some of those are things that she learned to do in teacher education classes, how to get the group together, how to get the students communicating. But in fact, we know how to do this as human beings, maybe not in front of a large classroom, but this is what we do every day when we communicate with others. There are a few things that she does, mentioned in the comments, that could be very much natural pedagogy. She's very socially tolerant, right? She's encouraging. There are no mistakes in this class, right? With children, sometimes we might slap their hand if they put it in a dirty place, but generally speaking, we encourage activity that may not be correct by adult standards, but that is learning activity. So the social tolerance she shows to students who don't really give much of an answer. The way she smiles, smiling you probably didn't learn in a B.Ed course. You smile naturally, and smiling attracts others to whatever you're doing and whatever you're saying. The use of nodding, I don't know if you saw it, but when the one student was having trouble sort of repeating what he had memorized, I guess, she continued to nod even as he stumbled. And therefore, we could say set a natural scaffold or a pathway for him to continue to sort of pick up where he lost it. And a number of other things. I would say her generally positive orientation is a big part of natural pedagogy, and many other things. Her gestures, the way she uses her eyes and points. I don't think any of these things are things we necessarily learn in teacher education programs. All right, let me wrap it up. So I took you on a little bit of an adventure, my adventure of trying to find out what is teaching. Okay, have I answered my question? Let's see. My definition of teaching at the moment and under development still is that teaching is curated learning. It's learning that is being actively and caringly constructed or co-constructed for the learner, okay? More than just what learners learn by themselves. So far, this is exactly what my friends told me. Teaching is helping other people learn, right? What I did find out, which was new to me, is that it may be it's very probable that teaching is not just something we learn to do as a human being, but something that we are actually born to do. As we're born to walk, even though we don't automatically walk, or born to use language, or born to breathe in air rather than water. These are all basic parts of our human being and human existence. Of course, they require some development and some experience, but they're part of us. They're not something we learn later on. In short, in sum, we're natural born teachers. Okay, that's the message I got from the literature and the exciting reading and talking to others that I had. So that's the experience I wanted to share with you. If you're interested, again, we've written some papers about this, but thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, and I hope it was interesting to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Dwight Atkinson. It was truly excellent and amazing session. We received a lot of comments pouring in and YouTube streaming that it's truly an innovative session. It is very useful. It's a thought-provoking session, mind-boggling session. Thank you so much, Professor, for that. I request Professor Sandhya Ravishankar and Professor N. Sam Golden of our department to kindly coordinate the Q&A session. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor. Can we move on to the question session?
Yes, please.
Yeah. How do we overcome fear of communication? One of the questions.
Excuse me. Off the top of my head, I would say, I think anxiety to communicate is mostly produced by our culture. It's not something natural. Perhaps through better educational practices and more encouraging, positive encouragement of children. Of course, societies have to norm their members, and a lot of child rearing and child care involves teaching children to control their behavior. But if we are in fact the communicative, cooperative animal par excellence, I think those are characteristics we need to encourage and promote in children. So I think we do a better job as a culture in promoting, encouraging excellent communication skills, including in college, including in university at more advanced levels.
Now, the next question is, can we relate the role of teaching to Ivan Pavlov's stimulus response theory?
Could I have the question one more time, which gives me a little more time to think about it?
Can you relate the role of teaching to stimulus response theory?
In a sense, I think we can, not in the old form of stimulus response theory of behaviorism. Clearly, there is much going on in the mind and the body and the heart and the of the child and the adult. But uh, animals are responsive to what's happening in their environment, what we could call the stimulus. My own sort of theoretical preference is to think of the mind, the body, and the world in a kind of ecological circuit. Not that they're separate things. So a stimulus is something that the environment tells us, or information that it can give us, and that then we react to as an ecological being. That's not classic behaviorism. It's we respond to things going on in the environment which are meaningful to us. So yes, if that's what a stimulus is, certainly.
So I've got a question. How do you think, or what would be the ideal combination of grammar translation method and direct method in the context of SLA, second language acquisition?
Grammar translation, and what was the other one? Direct method. Direct method and grammar translation. Yeah. Yes. I'm not a methods person, personally. But that's an interesting question. This is the kind of thing we talk about and think about in English language teaching. Very important. It's the how of teaching. How do we get students to get engaged in and learn a second language? What I'm trying to do in my research is to say that that's a methods level. It's a very important level. Let's not neglect it. But let's also look at what else is going on underneath, often invisible, the surface that even those methods can be built on. So I'm not answering the question because I would like to shift the focus a little bit to see what natural human abilities underlie and therefore are built upon, provide the foundations of all other aspects of teaching, including methods. I think methods, I personally don't think any particular method or combination of methods is the what do we say, the perfect panacea for language teaching. I do think we should look at what all people do, and even some animals do when they teach, to understand language teaching better. So forgive me for not answering the question, but it's a kind of principled non-answer, if you will. Methods are very important, but I'm certainly not speaking at that level.
Thank you. How important is the environment in curated learning? Is it created or available?
I think the environment is everything. I would define learning as responsiveness, improved or graduated responsiveness to the environment, being able to know how to survive and being able to survive in your environment. So it's completely environmental, right? I don't think people learn things that are not meaningful to them. Sometimes they do, but the most serious and important kinds of learning are learning to live in the world, in your ecology, which is often a social ecology, highly social ecology, better. So I think learning and teaching as well have everything to do with environmental well-being, environmental fittedness, for human beings in a very complex, very complex. Was my point in showing you a bit of Tokyo, a very complex world where learning and teaching-based learning must have a very important, crucial role.
is not teaching or learning experiential rather than cognitive, especially when it comes to second language teaching learning?
That's a great question. All of these are great questions, but that's one that I can actually answer a bit. Yes, of course. This is not about teaching a language should not be about embedding some kind of knowledge in your head, which is a kind of, in many theories of learning and teaching, it's a kind of private space where we represent the world. We sort of build an inner model of the world. No, teaching and learning are both in the world. They are how we obtain and create a better fit between ourselves and our eco-social environment. So absolutely experiential. I don't think the knowledge comes inside the head so much as our head goes out into the world and learns how to act, our head and our body, to act in the world in a way that allows it to survive and hopefully prosper. So I totally experiential, although there's another argument about the connection of the head and the world here. We won't go into that, but maybe another time.
Do you think scaffolding is the best way to introduce new concepts and thoughts?
I think scaffolding is one of the best ways. There are a number of ways that we even see in animals that they provide learning opportunities. One of them is, as we saw in the video, being unusually tolerant of learners, and mothers and families know how to do this with their children. We can do it in the classroom as well, and we often do. Providing opportunities for learning that the learner wouldn't otherwise have. Not exactly scaffolding. Scaffolding to me has more of a feel of sort of more guidance. Sometimes in animals, teaching research called stimulus enhancement, feedback. I think feedback is absolutely important. And of course, there's direct teaching where you say, do this, do this, do this. These are all important parts of the repertoire of natural teachers.
Professor, I have a question to ask you. It may not directly related to the topic, but out of my curiosity.
Yeah.
So it's something about your socio-cognitive approach, your theory. As you said, it is a hybrid of society, social and cognitive. In our country, in India, English is no more a second language to many of urban children right now. In the domestic space, where parents and grandparents speak multiple languages, so English becomes a pidgin language. So they start speaking English as their first language, and gradually they are exposed to other languages as well. So at least in some cases, say they simultaneously learn many languages, English and other languages. So, but I don't know whether I'm right, but I feel it's a kind of a restricted environment. They don't learn languages or language through culture. Since you emphasize on culture a lot, and sometimes they may end up in a way like they may not have a good command over languages they speak, but they don't realize the essence of languages. They use the language only for communication. That's it, nothing more than that. How do you see this situation?
According to the theory you were mentioning, it's a socio-cognitive theory of second language acquisition, of which this is part, the natural pedagogy is part. We think that people learn languages to do things in the world, to live better and to survive better and to be able to fit into the world better. and sometimes to change the world and resist the world as well. So I don't think we take a sort of deficit approach to language learning. We think people learn what they need to learn to survive and prosper. So someone, an Indian speaker of English who has a fairly narrow communicative competence, let's say they're a airline pilot and they know the language of airline pilots, which they have to know to survive. Or even a primary school teacher who has the language of teaching, we would typically say that's enough. They don't need to know the literature and the history and the Shakespeare. It would be nice, their meaningfulness would be enriched, but this has a very much a sort of a how to live in the world, everyday world, sort of functionality. And I think you get a lot of speakers of multiple languages in India because there are a lot of different ecologies and cultures that people have to fit into. There's not just one, right? So those are all tools for surviving and prospering in particular social environments.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. There's a question. How can the natural pedagogy be used in higher education?
Over to Sam.
Yes. How can the natural pedagogy be used in higher education?
Great. That's a good question. Personally, I haven't quite got there yet. I'm still trying to establish that it exists. But I think in all classrooms, there are ways of teaching that are maybe artificial. I mean, that's cultural. That's what we do. We invent new ways of doing things more productively. But I think whatever can be provided for, I think this is what I would say, whatever space can be provided for what students already know, and especially what students already know how to do. And what students already know how to do is to respond to encouragement, to communicate and work cooperatively with others. That's what human beings do. So any opportunities for the teacher to provide some natural groups, to work in groups, and take advantage of the natural instincts and abilities of human beings rather than trying to force a kind of book learning or top-down forms of learning. Teachers, I think it's very instructive to study what a meerkat does or what an otter does. There's a lot of literature on this to see what we can do. I'm sorry this is not a more specific answer, but classrooms are specific spaces and it's sort of hard to just say, do this, do that, end of story. So yeah.
So I think, do you have any more questions, Dr. Sandhya ma'am and Professor Sam?
I have got one more. What are the teacher techniques that you would suggest to improve listening skill?
Listening skill, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is coming exactly from the theory I'm trying to develop, but as an English language teacher, provide plentiful opportunities for listening of actual things that people may hear in the world. For Part 2 English students, at least, I think that might be more mundane texts than, I don't know, Shakespeare or some of the beautiful highest monuments of English literature. Give students, I don't think listening and speaking or listening and performing are separate things. We were hearing about performance yesterday and the recent passing of the great Professor Rajani, who was a performance artist, basically, can also be taken into the English language classroom It's a treasure of all MCC and all English at MCC. And roles can be acted out. People can inhabit others. Sometimes listen, but I don't divide listening and speaking and writing and reading. Rather, try to combine them because in real life they go together. I think the world is its own best model in many teaching situations, and seems to me the more we remove it from real world action, we are maybe we're teaching something, but I'm not sure we're teaching students to actually use what we're trying to teach them in ways that will benefit them in a more everyday way.
The last question. Other than scaffolding, teacher talk and body language are the other two teacher techniques that we normally use in a classroom. Can you share some of your experiences with Indian classroom?
Indian classroom.
Yeah.
I think the best, of course, I'm coming from a particular ideology and a particular style of teaching and learning, and I don't think, and I guess my friends at MCC knew this, people would come up to me and say, tell me how to teach. And I was going, no, I'm not here to tell you how to teach. I'm here to find out how people learn. I really was trying not to bring any kind of a judgment. I have all my judgments and all my training, but I really wanted to see how people were doing teaching and learning in Indian classrooms. But I think the more interactivity you can have among students, trying out and using the language, combined with other kinds of maybe more traditional approaches, not get rid of the old traditional approaches, but mix in some new. I think some drama would be nice. Definitely listening and speaking in real world situations. Sometimes we send students out into the world with a set of questions or a survey to complete. And certainly in Tamil Nadu, you'll find enough English speakers that you could do that kind of thing. And I'm sure things are changing from beyond when I was there. I do think, as I think my colleagues think, the way the desks, the way the tables are arranged often does not permit a sort of maximum ability to put students into groups, solving problems cooperatively, working on a linguistic script or a text or performance. Perhaps in the new educational world in India, the configuration of the classroom, the space could be modified so that there's more opportunity to use language as people know how to use language. But yeah, I think generally encouraging as much building on what people already know how to do in other languages, that is to interact and to carry over what they already know how to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for answering our questions, and we are super excited now. Definitely we will take this excitement into our classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sandhya and Professor Sam, for taking us through the Q&A session. On behalf of all of us, I'm going to request Professor Udayraj Ganesan of the Department of English to propose a vote of thanks.
Good morning to all of you. On behalf of the organizing committee of International Webinar on Environmental Theatre and Teaching Language and the Department of English, Madras Christian College, I would like to extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to Dr. Dwight Atkinson for his mellifluous rendering and sound musings on the act of teaching or curated learning. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Mekla Rajan for her continuous support and constant motivation for the endeavors like this. And it is a great joy to thank Dr. Paul Wilson, the Principal and Secretary, Madras Christian College, for his thought-provoking presidential address, which kickstarted the international webinar yesterday. And it is a privilege and honor to thank the former professors and professors from other departments who participated in the international webinar for last 2 days. And it's a great duty and pleasure to thank the faculty of English department who have been the source of great support and strength. And I thank them for their continuous support and prayerful words and deeds. And the heroes of the webinars are the participants. We hugely thank them for their active participation in the international webinar. They make this, their participation make this international webinar a great success. So we thank them wholeheartedly for their meaningful participation. Last but not least, we would like to thank the technical team that pulled right strings at right time to make this smooth, to make the smooth contact of this particular international webinar for last 2 days. Thank you all. Thank you so much for your valuable inputs and meaningful participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Udayraj, for your kind words. The famous English essayist Joseph Addison, while talking about education, said, "What sculpture is to a block of marble, education is to a human soul." With this thought in mind, we have come to the end of the second day of the international webinar on environmental theatre and language teaching. Thank you so much, Professor Dwight, for being with us. Thank you, dear participants. Please email us your queries to english@mcc.edu.in. We'll meet tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless you. Bye-bye.